I don't want to say this meanly because obviously, as you said, these large game companies not only have to produce, high retention, large audience games, but they have to be consistently producing more. Like if we look at Nintendo, Bethesda, BioWare, it has to be this consistent standard. But what I'm hearing is that as being part of a small game dev team, you are focusing on the quality of one game as opposed to the quantity of the many.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's kind of why indies shine too. It's just that they, put a lot into one, which, can feel like kind of scary at the same time, because what if it doesn't do well at launch? That kind of stuff. I think that's again why a lot of people are kind of gravitating a little more towards indies, because they're like, wow, they're putting so much love and quality into this game, and they're not just trying to churn out like a new like FIFA every year or like whatever, right? Like they're trying to actually make something that they're really proud of.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Gamers Gab, the podcast by gamers for gamers. I'm Artsy over at the Artsy Gamer. I make art, I play games, and I encourage others to do the same. Joining me for this incredible episode revolving around a small game dev team dynamic and the upcoming game Love Ghostie is Jennifer over at Janbeh Games, the lead developer. So, Jennifer, before we get started, if you would, give us a brief introduction of your sweet self and your pronouns, please and thank you.
I'm Jennifer, she, her. I am the lead developer of Love Ghostie. We're a very small team. But yeah, I love indie games. I love cozy games, and I'm so excited to be making an indie game that I'm very excited for, and I'm hoping that a lot of other people are excited for too.
Your introduction in game design was in the I don't know if the term would be corporate, but in the game industry, the ones where we talk about like BioWare, Bethesda. You started your journey as a software engineer, but I would love to hear how you got into the gaming industry.
It actually kind of started a little bit earlier for me when I was in college. So I majored in computer science, so I was going to be a software engineer. But in college, I actually took a couple of game design courses. And so there is when I kind of like first learned about indie games in general, because that like wasn't a very common thing talked about back then. And so I took those classes. You get to make your own game with like a very small team there. And I just kind of absolutely fell in love with it. And like since then, I've just always been like, oh, I love indie games. Like one day I kind of want to make my own indie game, but like I don't have an idea that I'm like passionate about. And it's actually pretty funny because my professor for that class, he had an entire lecture about why you shouldn't go into the gaming industry. Because he was saying like, oh, it's so stressful, like you don't get paid as well as other places, like there's crunch, like all this stuff. And he's just like, maybe you shouldn't. He's like, just be careful if you want to like go into this field. And so I actually took that advice seriously. And when I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go for like a normal software engineering job, like a very stable thing, like pays well, whatever. And then I worked for another software company for a while, and then in general, I was like looking for a new job anyway. And so I was like, okay, like I could try to look for gaming companies now. At the time, I was kind of hesitant because again, like you hear a lot about crunch and all that stuff. And I was like, I was like, worst case, if I really hate it and if it's really as awful as it seems, like I'll just quit after a year. Like at least I tried it sort of thing. But I ended up working for a mobile gaming company, and then I stayed there for 4 years, almost 4 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like definitely what I want to do. Like obviously there were times that were like really stressful and stuff, but like I think in general I was like, this is what I want to be doing. And like I don't think I could see myself going back to like a traditional software job anymore because it's just not as fun or not as interesting. And so yeah, and then I learned a ton from my old job, and like now I'm here where I'm wanting to make my own game and do my own thing. So it's very exciting, and I'm glad to be here.
Is there a discerning difference between a mobile game company and like the traditional game companies that we consider, like for consoles or PC or Mac? Is there a different layout for it?
It is similar. I would say it's a little bit different, I guess, in terms of like strategy and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, because a lot of the bigger games, especially if they're premium games, they're focused on like one project. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
for mobile games, sometimes you have a game that's been going on for like a decade or something
Mm-hmm.
like that because like it's just doing so well. And like in terms of like monetization, it's quite different too. Um, since mobile games tend to be, well, I guess the one that I was working at, they were all free to play games. So
Mm-hmm.
like you would have to monetize through like custom things, or like, there's maybe a time limit on how much content you can see at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it is very different. And I would say that like even developing on a mobile device versus developing for like PC or console is just pretty different.
Mm-hmm.
They both have their own challenges. I don't know. I think after working on Ghostie for a while, I think I prefer the PC console route, but that might also be just because I tend to game more on PC and
Mm-hmm.
console. So like I'm a little more biased towards that versus mobile. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
So, in comparison to your work as a well, were you a software engineer at the mobile gaming
Yes.
company? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in comparison to your work as a software engineer at the mobile gaming
Mhm.
company, what does your work as the lead developer of your own game, not a mobile game, look like?
It's very different. I would
Mm-hmm.
say at working for mobile games, it was like all engineering work.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, to do that every day is pretty tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the nice thing about working on like my own thing is that, I mean, it's kind of like a double-edged sword where it's nice to be able to work on a bunch of different areas, like
Mm-hmm.
design versus like UI and UX versus like coding versus marketing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's fun. I find it fun to do a bunch of different roles, because if I kind of get tired of like, oh, okay, I'll just do marketing today
Mm-hmm.
because that's just a change of pace. Whereas at my previous job, it was just like, I am a programmer. That is what I do. I'm very specific to this one thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then because, again, it's like a larger company, because I'm so focused on programming, I don't really get that much creative,
Mm-hmm.
like flexibility that I would working on my own game. And of course, we were allowed to like, give our creative opinions, or like if we had play tests or something, I could say, like this part's not fun or this part's not clear or whatever. But I think it's just different whenever you have like dedicated roles for all of that. And it's like a very structured organization versus an indie game where everyone can contribute to anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a very more like flexible, like fluid type of like environment.
I would love to hear the timeline of how Love Ghostie came into being along the lines of, working at the mobile gaming company to becoming the lead developer of your own indie game company.
At my previous job, something that I think helped a lot for me for working on Ghostie is like I worked on a lot of like prototypes for the previous
Mm-hmm.
company. So I was actually the sole engineer for a lot of different projects, and like
Wow.
we would try a bunch of things, and then a lot of them didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
But like then I would jump on the next project and start to do that. And so because I kind of got an idea of like starting a game from the beginning and
Mm-hmm.
seeing it to like not official launch, but like kind of a launch, I was like, okay, I kind of see the flow of like how you would ship your own game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot of that. And so towards the end of my time at my previous job, that was like during the peak pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So it was obviously like a lot of people were kind of just reevaluating their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was too. And I was kind of stressed at my previous job. I think part of that was like being the only engineer for a lot of projects. I was just like constantly like going at
Wow.
100% all the time. And I was just very, very stressed. And yeah, the pandemic was kind of like, do I want to keep doing this? Like, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
should take a break. And so then I ended up quitting, and I was actually going to just take like some time off.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
Yeah.
it started. It was just going to take some time off. And then I was like, okay, I'll take some time off and then I'll look for another job. And then what it ended up being was, I had mentioned that I really had always wanted to do my own indie games since I was in college. I was thinking, I was like, maybe this is like my time to do it. Because if I'm going to take time off anyway, like let me just see what I can do. And I've
Mm-hmm.
like learned a lot in the past couple of years. Yeah, and so I kind of thought about this idea and like, it's funny because like in the early days I was sharing a lot on TikTok and it was like very like placeholder art and stuff, but like a lot of people were excited about the idea of like being a ghost matchmaker. And so it started to pick up a lot more than I was anticipating, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, okay, maybe this is actually like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of just went from there where I was like, oh wow, like I feel really strongly about this idea. And like, it's been a couple years and I still feel very strongly about it. But yeah, I think it was just kind of like a let's see. And then I tried it out and I was like, okay, I think I can do this. And now here I am.
Your idea of Love Ghostie effectively started before Janbeh Games came into being. Is that correct?
I mean, it was kind of around the same time. I think
Okay.
that like when I was thinking about it, I was like, should I do this for real,
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the time, like I was thinking like even if it's not, like successful in the end, I'd still would want to ship a game and launch a game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me it was like kind of simultaneous in the sense that like I wanted to do it anyway. So it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like, happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm. As the lead developer, I guess that would mean that you would have to rally a lot, well, not a lot, but like a small team of people in order to make your game into a reality. So I would love to hear how that process also was alongside the game development of Love Ghostie.
That one I feel like I've gotten pretty fortunate with in the terms of we have two full time, so it's me and then it's my friend who's the artist, and we had actually met at my previous job.
That's
So that's
awesome.
how we knew. Yeah, so we actually knew each other from that. And so again, it was kind of like I was like working on a lot of stuff on my own. And then I was like, hey, do you want to work on this thing with me? And she was like also very excited about it. And so she ended up joining me a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like other people, because we also have a lot of contractors helping out as well,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those people actually, so my composer, I actually met her on Twitter. And she had reached out to me and was saying like, oh, I love Ghostie as a concept, like it's so cute. And she asked me, she's like, do you have a composer? And I was like, I don't actually. So that's
Mm-hmm.
how we met and we kind of chatted. And then, she's helping us out now and she's amazing at what she does. And um, sound designer, we hired a sound designer earlier this year. And again, it was through connections. It
Mm-hmm.
was, me reaching out because sound design is like a very like niche thing. And I personally don't really know that many sound designers. For her, I actually had to reach out to like my connections at my previous job. And I was like, hey, does anyone know a sound designer? And then through
Mm-hmm.
that, like I found it was kind of like a few steps, but then eventually I got to meet my sound designer and like chat with her. Um, and so all of that is weirdly through connections and like places from or like people through people from my old job, which is honestly one of the biggest benefits. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I met a lot of people at my previous job and they are all amazing people. Like I loved working with them and it's just kind of nice to have that connection and that network.
Mm-hmm. So the entire story of Love Ghostie is it comes from you originally, but there was a lot of I don't want to say creative freedoms that you gave to other people to kind of make your game into reality, but how did you pick and choose what you would be working on with your game versus having another artist work on it or having a composer do it in comparison to like
Mm,
uh, you know Eric Barone over at Concerned Ape effectively designed Stardew Valley everything. And so one,
right.
I can only imagine how stressful and how long that is, but it seems that you delegate those tasks to a team that you trust.
Right. Yeah. And I think really the biggest part of what has been like amazing about this whole process is that I do have a team that I trust and they're very good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's funny because for me, like even though I'm kind of like overseeing everything,
Mm-hmm.
I don't I can't tell like a composer like how to do so. And then same with like art too. Like it's hard for me to like I can't give them like specifics because that's not something I'm an expert in. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the nice thing is that I've been able to think of a lot of references. So like that's what I'll do for them. And so specifically for like music, I would send a bunch of links of like, this is kind of the vibe I'm going for. And even if it's like the small, it's like 5 seconds from one clip, and then it's like, like a minute from this one. And so that's actually what I'll do for my composer. And I think that's the best way to, I guess, work with someone like that, because I don't know the technical terms, I guess, for some of the like music composition, but I can send you a bunch of references for like, the vibe I'm going for, or like something like that. And that's kind of the case for art. I would say that my artist, like, she is very good at what she does. And for us, like, I think because she's so she like we're very aligned, I guess, on the vision for Ghostie. And so because of that, I honestly don't really have to tell her much besides like, I need like these characters or whatever, like, or these animations for these characters. It's actually quite nice because I can just tell her like kind of like a high level of what it'll be, and then she'll come back to me with like all the work. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, no edits. Like, so again, I think it's just like, yeah, having that trust and, really trusting the team that you work with, and like they just, yeah, just the fact that they can like take what I've given them and produce work that is better than I probably could have told them to do is like really, really amazing.
I have to say the newest concept art of the hamster character.
Oh.
Oh my gosh, I was like, that's like Hamtaro, but romanceable. I cannot. I it was the cutest little thing, and I love the artist's like focus of putting like little hearts in the eye, the eye whites, so that
Yeah.
the characters aren't dead inside. But oh my gosh, I was just like, man, I what I loved most about the art and the artist that you brought to Love Ghostie is that I don't know if it was purposeful, but these characters are so fan artable. I know that's not a word, but we're going to make it a word now. It's now in Webster, right? But it's like it's something that people can really just love drawing because of how adorable it is, but it's also so very realistic. So what I'm hearing is that a pro of being a small game dev team is that there is a lot more coordination, that it doesn't feel like it gets lost. But I would love to hear what you feel the pros, and then if you want to get into it after, the cons of being in a small game dev team.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like one of the pros, is that like having a team that is, one, like very passionate about the product, and like two, like very aligned on the product too. It just makes things so much easier. Like the fact that I don't have to communicate much, it's just like really, really great. I mean, another pro of that is like no meetings really. Like we barely have meetings, which is really nice.
Seriously.
Because I know at my previous job, it was just like meetings all the time. And then on top of that, I would have to get my work done. Whereas this is like, I like my artist and I, like we barely meet, to be honest. Like we're both remote, but we actually only meet if there's like a really like, if there's like a feature that we're trying to work on, and like we do need to discuss, like I need to know from her, like on the art side, is this feasible or not, and like vice versa. But for the most part, we actually just chat on Discord. Like that's how we kind of just get most of our work done. It's just we just message each other questions on Discord, and that's fine. And then occasionally, like we do live near each other, so occasionally we just go just to hang out and like chat and brainstorm and stuff. But like that, like we don't actually have to like meet like we did at my previous job, and it's nice because it's just I have so much time to focus and just do my work, instead of like this overhead of like, what is everybody working on, or like that kind of stuff. So that's definitely a big pro. I had mentioned before, being able to take over multiple roles. I much prefer that over doing one thing. It makes things easier to kind of go through. Because I know that if I code for a really long time, I just get so sick of it, and like I just need something to break up the pace. And getting into writing, or like getting into the UI or like UX and stuff like that, definitely helps to break up the like monotony of just coding the entire time. So yeah, that's definitely like the pros of it. For the cons, again, I had mentioned like the double-edged sword, like doing everything yourself is also very tiring, and it's a lot of responsibility. I think the biggest thing is like it's tough because like I have to do the marketing side, or like the social media side as well. And I mean, especially lately, I've just been so focused on work that I just
Mm-hmm.
don't even bother to post on social media as much. And it's always that tough balance of, I don't want to feel like the game has gone dead or like silent,
Yeah.
whenever you don't hear from it from like a month and like people are like, oh, they stopped working on it. It's like, no, I promise I'm actually working on it harder because you're not hearing from me. So I think it's a lot of just like managing that, managing a lot of player expectations, I
Mm-hmm.
would say too. Because I mean, as a consumer, you don't really think of this game as, or I guess a lot of people don't really like think, oh, this game is only made by two people or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? They say like indie game, like sure it could be smaller, but I still expect like all these features or like all
Mm-hmm.
this content or something like that. And I think it's tough because you kind of need to manage that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Also kind of want to hype up your game too, so it's just like a tough balance. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the biggest thing I've learned is just to be transparent because I think then you're like setting the expectation very clearly and, being like, we're a small team. We only have so much time. We're trying our best. And people usually are like,
Mm-hmm.
okay with that. They're like, oh, that makes sense.
Early in the conversation, you talked about the burnout you experienced as a software engineer, where you are working on multiple projects at the same time. And so it does seem that a pro and a con is being a lead developer in your own company is that you can prioritize wellness, like mental wellness. So
Yes.
how have you gone about making sure that, what you experienced at a large gaming company is not something that affects your team and you, obviously?
There is not someone breathing down my neck
Hmm.
for like deadlines. And I think that's what tried to make sure when I'm leading a group of people is that
Hmm.
I'm not, constantly like, oh, we have a deadline and, you need to get this done by this date or whatever. Um, and I think a big problem that my previous job, and honestly, this happens a lot with like a lot of software jobs, is you plan for like a feature or like,
Hmm.
a product to launch. But I think a lot of the leadership, they don't really understand how long it actually takes to make these things.
Hmm.
Even though they plan out a certain amount of time, it actually ends up taking double or triple the time.
Yeah.
And I think because I know that in my head to account for that. And
Hmm.
so I think that's a big difference where because I've been through it so many times now,
Yeah.
like whenever I estimate, I'll say like maybe 3 months till the next like milestone that we have, but
Hmm.
it ends up taking like 6 months or 9 months or something. And so I think, having that mindset of it's probably going to take a lot longer than I thought. And
Hmm.
if it's faster, that's great. Like that's a bonus.
Hmm.
But it should always be accounting for like a longer period of time.
Hmm.
And so I always planning out things to account for that. For the people that I work with, like I don't really give them hard deadlines.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think a part of that is because I'm kind of the bottleneck anyway. So like
Hmm.
I know that they'll get it done before I will because I have way more stuff to do than they do.
Hmm.
And so it is like, I try to keep it a little bit more light and not be like so heavy on
Hmm.
deadlines. And then, like, and I try to keep like things like balance because
Hmm.
sometimes I like to go to the gym or something during the day or whatever.
Hmm.
And like, I make that clear to the people, well, I guess the only person working full time with me is my artist. But like I'll let her know, like, or she'll let me know if she has to like run errands or something. And it's not
Hmm.
like, no, you have to be working like now or you have to
Hmm.
be working these certain hours. It's like very flexible. And I think the fact that, I also demonstrate that I
Hmm.
like am taking vacation, I am
Hmm.
taking breaks, like it's okay to just take a day off or if you're not feeling well or something. And I think having that kind of example helps because it makes other people feel more comfortable to do that.
Hmm.
Whereas like at my previous job, I felt bad taking a sick day because
Yeah.
I was like, I'll be behind if I don't get my work done.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas this, it's like, it's okay. Like you should take a sick day. You should like feel better, like that kind of stuff. So I think it's just kind of setting that example and just, being transparent about it.
Hmm. Is that something that you feel the larger game development company model could actually implement realistically, because I feel that they've created such a standard and expectation of creation and implementation of these games that I mean, I have a family member that works in QA at
Mm.
Bethesda, for example, and burnout is very frequent among, that process. And so I was wondering, like, can the large gaming companies actually do that for their employees?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very tough question
Mm-hmm.
because I know that like as you get larger, like things try to be a little more efficient and
Mm-hmm.
like the production and like for larger game companies too, like they do kind of have more strict deadlines for when they
Mm-hmm.
need to get things out. Especially if you think of games that like need to come out for the holidays or something like
Yeah.
that. Like it's very different than an indie game where
Mm-hmm.
I could say like, oh, we're gonna release in this time, and then if like we need more time, I'll be like, oh, okay, we're gonna delay it like a couple months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's tough. I'm not sure, and it's kind of sad to say that like realistically that might not happen. But yeah, it's tough. Like I haven't had much experience in other companies and how they
Mm-hmm.
deal with it, but from what I've seen, it seems like indie game studios tend to be just better at it, but it might just be
Mm-hmm.
because they're smaller and they
Mm-hmm.
can afford to do that
Mm-hmm.
versus, larger companies. It's yeah, tough to say.
Why do you think the small game dev model is, I would personally say, taking over the gaming genre of of enjoyment? Because it seems that I don't know if the cozy content creator, circle that I'm part of is just becoming more indie focused, but almost all of us love playing indie games, period. People are really starting to enjoy and appreciate games that are not coming from the large game companies.
Something that's really special about indie games, which I personally really love, is that they can get really niche,
Mm-hmm.
and then two, I feel like you can tell there's a lot of love that is put into them. And so for the first one, for like larger gaming companies, especially ones that are like huge, like they kind of have to appeal to a huge audience
Mm-hmm.
because they need to make that money back. And it's tough because like yeah, like they have to appeal to everyone, and like cozy games have been becoming more popular lately, which is personally really great because
Mm-hmm.
when I play games, I kind of want to just like brain off and then have like kind of like a mindless sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I think that's where indies kind of really shine, is just that they can be really, really niche. And like I mean, Love Ghostie is pretty niche in terms of its like audience, being able to narrow on your audience and then being able to put a lot of like spend a lot of time doing like Easter eggs or like,
Mm-hmm.
little like things of love in there. Like kind of like
Mm-hmm.
again with my artist, like putting hearts everywhere in the art and like in the eyes, like
Mm-hmm.
that's not something that's like, you know, at a larger company, like someone's not gonna put in like a spec like, oh, put hearts in their eyes, like or like put in all these details because that's just gonna take so much time and it's
Mm-hmm.
not worth it for them to take that much time to put it, especially if it's not gonna like contribute anything or a feature. But for us, it's like she can put in all these details, and when she sends it to me, I'm like, oh my god, these are so cute! Like I love it. And for us, it's like, yeah, it doesn't do anything, but it adds to this charm of the game. And
Mm-hmm.
like, when people notice it or like people notice these details, they get really excited about it,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cute. And I really, really love that. And so, yeah, I think it's just a lot of like what larger game companies do. And I saw this a lot at
Mm-hmm.
like my previous job, was that they always prioritize features that are like important. And like, either it'll, since we were free to play, it would be like, does it, increase like the retention of like the players? Does it
Mm-hmm.
increase like, the monetization? Like what value does it give us? And then
Mm-hmm.
for indies, it's not really about value. It's just because we want to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's really nice about it.
Based on the lessons that you've learned in being part of a mobile gaming company, it sounds like there was a lot of unlearning from that as well. That, like, instead of focusing on, I don't want to say this meanly, because obviously, as you said, these large game companies not only have to produce high retention, large audience games, but they have to be consistently producing more. Like if we look at Nintendo, Bethesda, BioWare, it has to be this consistent standard. But what I'm hearing is that as being part of a small game dev team, you are focusing on the quality of one game as opposed to the quantity of the many.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's kind of why indies shine too. It's just that they, put a lot into one, which, can feel like kind of scary at the same time, because what if it doesn't do well at launch? That kind of stuff. I think that's again why a lot of people are kind of gravitating a little more towards indies, because they're like, wow, they're putting so much love and quality into this game, and they're not just trying to churn out like a new like FIFA every year or like whatever, right? Like they're trying to actually make something that they're really proud of, and it's just different.
I'm not going to ask a financial question in the sense that I'm like asking about your finances, but I am really curious how you funded being a small game dev team in order to take care of yourself, but also other people.
Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of in an exceptional case where I'm actually self-funding it in the sense that again, since I like had software engineers outside of, or like after college, I mean, I did get paid well, and as a software engineer, like I saved a lot. So I guess after like almost 10 years of savings, and I'm not typically like a person who spends a lot of money. So for me, like that's why actually I was going to take time off too. But yeah, so for me, it's just I'm self-funding it, and I'm just using my savings right now. But I think in general, like again, when I had mentioned like, oh, this could be a real thing for like Ghostie, I did time box it, because if it wasn't going to pick up, I wasn't going to spend more time on it, more money on it, because that just doesn't make sense. But I think now we're at a point where, this does seem viable, and it could be, something that I would get like a return on. And so, yeah, as of now, I don't think we'll need external funding, but in the case that we do, there are a lot of like funding things that I can apply to, or like Kickstarter is always an option as well. But I think in general, like planning wise, I think we should be okay.
Do you are you connected to other indie game teams or lead developers to like kind of bounce ideas off of support and everything?
Yeah, I think that's actually one thing that I really, really like about the indie game community or indie game dev community, is that everyone is very, very friendly and very like open to talking about their experiences. And so I have met a lot of other indie game devs through like TikTok and Twitter. Everyone's just been super nice. I think everyone just knows it's really hard to be an indie dev, that like everyone's like, oh yeah, like, if you have any questions, like let me know. Or if you like, need any help with a certain thing, like let me know or whatever. And people are very willing to share, like what worked for them marketing, what worked for them in terms of like working with publishers, that kind of stuff. And it's just it's a really, really nice community, and I'm like very grateful for it, because it totally could be an environment where everyone's like cutthroat and they won't like bother helping out other people because it's like a competition or whatever. But no, it's definitely not that case. Like I absolutely love it. People are so friendly, and it's nice to like make friends with other indie devs and get to chat with them and stuff like that.
What is something that you learned from another game developer that you've applied to love Ghostie?
Probably a lot of marketing and social media ideas, mostly because before Ghostie, I actually never had a public social media at all. And so for me, that was like very scary because I've never tweeted out anything or, like posted like a TikTok of my face and stuff like that. And so I think the biggest thing was like learning, like marketing, learning stuff about Steam as well. Because again, I had only worked in the mobile industry, so I know like how to do like Google Play and like the Apple Store and stuff, but like I didn't know how to do Steam or anything like that. So kind of just like stuff like that, some different tools to use too for game development. again, because like I had been mostly focused on mobile and not so much, on using like controllers and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a lot of general advice, I would say.
What was an eye-opening realization or something that had worked? Because I know that you said that marketing was kind of relatively new to you, but it seems that there are these tips and tricks within the algorithm or trends on social media that are just like, that works, really? Really? Are you sure? And then it does. Did anything like that happen to you?
So something that kind of like was weird and it did work was, so whenever I was first announcing the demo for Love Ghostie, I had posted like a screenshot or like a GIF of some gameplay. And I remember saying like, oh, the demo's coming out like next week. Like if you are a creator or like a streamer and you like want early access to the demo, like can you like let me know? And it's funny because most people tend to like link a form or something like that, or or they'll say like, oh, DM me or something. But because I had not specified, I got so many comments on that post that I think it helped with the algorithm because it just kept recommending it to more and more people. And even after the demo came out, I kept getting comments on it saying like, oh, I want early access. I was like, oh, it's already out. And so that was kind of like a weird one where like I wasn't really expecting that to work, but it did, and weirdly in my favor. But yeah, I don't know. Social media is like very weird, especially now with like Twitter or X, and then all the Twitter clones and stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't. But yeah, it's strange. And then like even like TikTok, like I haven't really been posting on TikTok or anything recently. So I don't know. It's just kind of like you just got to try a bunch of stuff, and sometimes stuff sticks, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't even work the second time when you think it should, and who knows.
What led to your decision to providing a free demo as well as early access to Love Ghostie?
So for visibilities for indie games, like a big part of marketing is having some sort of playable for streamers and content creators, because oftentimes like, well, in general, indie games don't have the marketing budget. They're kind of more about getting that organic visibility during development, and the only way to really do that is like through a demo or like some sort of like playable build. And so advice that's given very broadly to the indie game dev community is like, you should have a demo, especially nowadays, because then people can try it out. Streamers and content creators can play it and talk about it. And, that usually helps a lot with visibility. And then sometimes even some of the festivals that you'll see on Steam, like, for example, Love Ghostie was part of Tiny Teams in the beginning of August. Like that one, I don't remember if it requires a demo, but it's like very highly recommended that you have one, because they stream playing demos and stuff. So that usually also helps with like those type of festivals. Personally, for Love Ghostie, I think something that we had struggled with was showing off what the gameplay was going to be, because Love Ghostie is not really a genre in the sense that like it's like a kind of a dating sim, kind of like all this stuff, but it's really like a very defined genre where you'll know like what you're getting into. And because of that, like it was kind of hard to show the fun almost of Love Ghostie. Like I could say like, oh, you gift gifts, you like, set them up on dates and stuff. But because a lot of our gameplay is like also in menus, it kind of seems a little boring when you post it on Twitter or like, TikTok and stuff. I think a demo was like the only way for us to kind of show off like what it was going to be. And I mean, I kind of was like a little hesitant whenever the demo was going to be released, because I was like, what if this isn't what people are expecting? Or like, what if people don't like it? Or what if people don't find it funny or whatever? Yeah, I think it helped us a ton, honestly, like to release a demo. Like the feedback that we've been getting has been amazing, and like it's been really nice watching people play it, because I don't know, it just makes me feel like really fulfilled and satisfied when people like laugh at the jokes, or like they're like, oh, this is so cute. But yeah, it's definitely helped us a lot, and in terms of like wishlist numbers too, it's like helped us a ton, just because I think people now know what to expect, like what the gameplay is. They actually like fun and entertaining. and then they kind of know also what to expect in the future for the full release.
Mm-hmm. I know that we talked briefly about the when Love Ghostie kind of like popped into your brain, but you were saying on the website for Janbeh Games that Love Ghostie was kind of like a love child of Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing, where I guess I don't play Fire Emblem, but I know that there's like unique coupling situations that have unique storylines. And so I want to hear, did you just like randomly, were you just drinking coffee and preparing for your day as a software engineer, and you're like, what if like ghosts decided to like be silly and put two animals together? Like how did that happen?
So I think it kind of first started when I played Fire Emblem. So my first Fire Emblem game was Fire Emblem Three Houses, which came out I think like 2018 or something like that. And it's funny because like I had never played Fire Emblem, but one of my friends was like, you need to play this game, like you're gonna love this game. And it's because usually actually I love JRPGs and I love like tactics-based games. So then someone was like, you should play this game because you're gonna love it. And as I was playing it, I actually found myself not really liking, well, not that I didn't like the tactics, but I found myself more drawn to the characters and to like the relationships and stuff. And it was more that I was like grinding the battles to get more relationships so I could see more of them. And because of that, I guess like the initial inception of Love Ghostie kind of came from that, because I was so hooked on like learning more about these characters and learning more about their relationships and like the shipping, that I was like, why is there not a game that's like about shipping? Because it just, for Fire Emblem, like subreddits for it, like everyone's talking about like who's their favorite couple. There's like always fan art of like all the different couples and stuff. And I was like, there's something there, but I don't know quite like what it is. But there's something clearly there because people are very, you know, into shipping. People ship for like TV shows and stuff too. And so like I was like, there's something there, and there's like, that's kind of the initial maybe like inception of the idea, but you know, like I was just like, there's something there, I don't know what it is yet, you know, whatever. And then I played Animal Crossing, like New Horizons, and that was my first Animal Crossing game. And you know, I fell in love with all the characters, like all the villagers. And something I had noticed for Animal Crossing is sometimes like in the subreddit or whatever, people would kind of try to ship their villagers, or like, you know, try to get their villagers like to like run into each other. Or I remember specifically there was like one post that I had seen where it was like someone made like a heart like lake, and then there was like two villagers like sitting by the lake, and they're like, oh, they're so cute together. And then I was like, okay, going back to my shipping idea sort of thing, like half-baked idea, what if like it was shipping but it was like cute characters, kind of like Animal Crossing? And then I was like, okay, again, there's like something there. And then it kind of just like kept like, I just kept thinking about it more and more. And then I was like, okay, so if you're shipping characters, like who are you playing as? And I don't know why, but the first thing I thought of, I was like, oh, a ghost, because like they wouldn't know that you're there versus like, you know, if you were like an actual person, they would probably know that you were trying to set them up, and that might be like a little complicated or whatever. And yeah, I don't know why that came up, but I was just like, oh, a ghost kind of makes sense. Like, sure.
It is really cute. It is super cute. I think what I love most, you are the writer of Love Ghostie. Like all of those puns are yours.
So I have a contractor who's also helping out with writing, but so it's kind of like a mix. But yes, I have done some of them.
Because I think one of my favorite things is like in the introduction of Love Ghostie, it's like Ghostina is trying to say, congratulations, this is now your new job. And then your character's like, I died? Like, oh, excuse me? And then like the whole thing's like, wait, how did I die though? Like, who was I? Why do I suddenly find a really fun experience like putting two people I don't know and cute animals together? It's it was so well done. And I love the puns both about like phishing and scamming other ghosts for things, going on to Reddit and like having forums. And I think what I found so compelling and so genius is that the forums were like reminders that, oh, if you sold the introduction apple, you're okay. It's fine. It's not going to be a big deal. And so just like reassuring you how like the gameplay is supposed to go with these forums was truly genius. That was such a really good idea.
It's funny because that was actually kind of an accident. The Reddit forums were actually just supposed to be like lore, like just, you know, random stuff about being a ghost and like the ghost world. I had wanted to do the demo like early this year, like January, February-ish. But I was doing a lot of playtesting with like friends and like acquaintances and stuff. And something that happened a lot that I saw during the playtests were that people were saying, I'm afraid to do anything because I don't want to like commit these two like characters, or like I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid of the consequences. Like I don't know what, and it kind of ties back to this idea of like the gameplay for Love Ghostie is pretty unique. So I can understand why people are afraid to do certain things because they don't know what the consequence of their actions is. And so for me, I was like, oh, how do I like tell people that it's okay to do anything that you want? You know, like you can experiment, you can play around with things, without being, you know, throwing a lot of text that's like, it's okay to do this. It's okay to, you know, like I didn't want to like throw that all at you at the beginning. And so I was like, why don't I just use the forums
It's
and then
brilliant.
just add it as like a forum?
Yeah.
And because in that case, it's quicker and easier to read than like, you know, like a pop-up or anything. And I was like, okay, I should just like take those frequently asked questions from playtests and just put it in the forums. And I was like, that just works so perfectly. And it's nice because people will read them and they'll laugh at the jokes and stuff, but they'll also be like, oh, that's useful. Like, you know, I like getting the information this way versus, you know, a bunch of like text telling you like specifically how to do everything. So yeah, that was like a very happy accident.
That's truly a Bob Ross moment. It was truly brilliant. I think what I found so funny is that I loved the general gameplay of Love Ghostie, but the ambiance and all of like the side features, I think were what I was just like laughing the entire time I was doing the demo. It was truly just like, there's so many little components that you can interact with in the game that, I mean, I'm talking to you about your game like you don't know, but like it's just there's so many like really cool components that really make the entire gameplay enjoyable. It's like I was having a fun time like scamming other ghosts, and I was having a really fun time like coming up with like different stories, and I think it was truly a unique game that I think there is a niche. I think you're right. I think that this could be the start of an incredible genre. So it's really beautiful. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
I know that we are nearing the end of our interview, and I know that we've already talked about the lessons learned, but what is something about Love Ghostie, aside from going on a really well-deserved vacation after launch, but like what are the lessons learned from Love Ghostie that you are going to apply to future games, if that's where you want to go?
Yeah. I think a big thing is to kind of just try every idea that you possibly can, because actually for the fishing mini game, when I actually first thought of that, I didn't think it was going to be fun. I actually I was not optimistic at all. I was like, I think this is just going to be like an okay thing. It's going to get like repetitive, whatever. And then I was like, you know what? It's not hard to do it. So let me just do like a very simple version and just try it out. And then when I played it, I was like, wow, this is hilarious. I was like, I love this so much. And so I was like, okay, this actually like worked out perfectly. And so I think it is kind of just like trying different ideas, you know, especially for like mini games or stuff, and just like try it and see what it feels like. And then kind of like pay attention to that. Because we've had it on the opposite end where like I have made a mini game that I thought would be fun. And then I tried it and I was like, this is like, okay, you know, like it's not that fun. And so it is kind of just like, you kind of have to just try it, see it. And if there's that little like intuition feeling that's like, you know, maybe this is not that great, I think it's okay also to, you know, abandon ideas too. You can spend a lot of time trying to make something that's not fun, but that process might take so long, or it might just never happen, that like you waste a lot of time. And I think again, for that idea for like a mini game, like I tried it, I didn't think it was that fun, so I was like, okay, let me just scrap it, let me try something else. And then, you know, it's just kind of that iterative process of trying things out, getting feedback on it, external feedback too, and then just keep going from there and kind of trust that process that it'll work. Like even the demo for Love Ghostie, it went through a lot of iterations before it got to its final version. Like it was a lot slower at the beginning. Like the tutorial was a lot longer. Like it was very different, and like just keep iterating and, you know, keep getting feedback on it, and then to make it just as best as it, you know, as good as it can be.
What would you encourage aspiring game developers to be aware of before pursuing the indie game dev life?
There's a lot of things, but I mean, again, yeah, like the playtesting and trying out and listening to like player feedback and stuff like that. But I think the other thing, and this kind of ties again with the burnout that I had talked about earlier, is that making a game takes so long that it's like you have to take it like one day at a time. And like it's really easy to just be like, oh, I just want to get this one thing done, but then like it just keeps going and you just have to pace yourself. And then I know as like an indie dev too, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with stuff, because like that happens to me a lot, where I'm like, I have so many things to do, like I don't have enough time to do it. And again, it's just like you have to, like, you know, do things slowly, do it one day at a time, and like eventually you'll get there. Like looking back at the past year, like we've accomplished so much. And a year ago, if I looked at that, I would have been like, oh, there's no way we would have like gotten that much done, but like we did. And so it's just kind of take your time with it, pace yourself, you know. It'll like just take it slowly.
I don't want to ask like when can we expect Love Ghostie, but where do you feel conservatively that we can expect more updates with Love Ghostie, if not the launch of the game?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get it out next year. It's obviously it's dependent on a lot of factors.
Sure.
Yeah, I think right now we're actually kind of wrapping up a lot of the mechanics.
Nice.
A couple like personal deadlines for myself for getting a lot of things done, because I do want to spend a lot of time like polishing and like bug fixing and all that stuff. And so for me, it's just like I'm trying to get the mechanics done, like, you know, fully soon-ish. And so, but yeah, I'm very excited for the product. I think based off of the demo, like the feedback that I've gotten from the demo, it's all been like very positive. And honestly, a lot of people aren't really expecting more. And like they're obviously expecting like more characters and like more relationships and stuff. But like I'm adding like a couple more mini games and stuff like that, and like more other stuff. And so I'm actually really excited about that, because I think people are not really expecting it. But it'll be like nice to be like, oh, there's actually a lot more than just, you know, more characters. It's like there's actually more mechanics and more things to do too. So
that is so cool. I know that I think as being a small game dev team that you definitely have applied a lot of your lessons learned with being in a large gaming industry, and giving yourself, I think, self-compassion and grace, but also allowing yourself some conservative, you know, plans ahead. But that's super exciting, Jennifer. Is Love Ghostie going to be available on both PC and the Switch, or like how do you plan on doing that?
So I do. Well, I guess it's not confirmed for Switch, but we are trying to get it on Switch. For launch, it's probably only going to be PC, and then we'll probably do a Switch release later, just because timing-wise, I think it would be easier to do it not at the same time.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because, yeah, Switch has its own ordeal of problems. So, yeah, so I think it'll probably be separate, but we do hope to be on Switch. So.
That's amazing. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on. I do apologize for the some of the technical issues that we had, but how can we aggressively promote not only Love Ghostie, but Janbeh Games for future you know, endeavors?
I care more personally about Love Ghostie than my personal brand. But yeah, you can wishlist Love Ghostie on Steam. That helps us out a ton. And then on socials, I'm Janbeh on all socials, I think. So you can follow me there. But I mostly post only about Love Ghostie. Yeah, and then hopefully future games too, if that if Love Ghostie works out, hopefully we can make other games too. So, yeah.
Well, I do know that a lot of my content creator friends who played Love Ghostie's demo were just enamored, and I definitely will be purchasing game at launch. It looks amazing. I have not had so much fun playing what I would say, I mean, I don't want to call it a simple game because it's not, but like just something that allows for you to just like chill out and enjoy the process and not like feel that there's like math required because you already did it. It's just it's truly a delightful game. So friends, please be sure to wish list Love Ghostie over on Steam. Please be sure to give whatever support you can for really any indie game dev, because they work so hard to provide the fun that we enjoy. And with that, friends, we'll catch you next time. Bye.